A few audio difficulties there, Davo.
Well, we were. Mate, the lights fell down.
And the camera.
And the camera.
And all the food showed up.
But the food showed up.
That's the main thing.
That's the most important thing. Now we have no idea if we have any comments. But
we'll see how we go. It may be too loud. Nothing might be happening. Who knows?
Fee can shout at us if she sees any. I'll turn it on for her so she knows what she's doing.
Okay, you do that, Dave. We are down here at David Neats's Brewmanity pub in South Melbourne. A brand new pub. Newly refurbished too. He's just got the gas heaters put in behind us just as winter's hit. This is brand new, this pub. It's been building it for a very long time. Last week he only had, the last time we were here where I broadcasted without you, Davo, he had one roof part in. So we are covered from the rain if it does. He's put two more in and he's actually just added.
Yeah, what's she getting on?
He's just added the heaters. Gas heaters, really not mucking around with the gas heaters too. They're really professional ones, but sorry, Davo, they're not hooked up.
I'm going to need, I've been running around trying to get everything ready. So I'm going to probably rug up at some point, but we're live now and it's Anzac Day tomorrow and the football's on tonight. The audio seems to be working. The food tastes good. What else can we ask for? A Melbourne win, maybe?
That would be ideal. You've got what you want. The West Coast Eagles are winning.
Mate,
what is going on with the world, people?
We are coming. So, mate. But, we've also got Harley Reid's resting this week. You know what they said? He said, okay, what's his injury? Shoulders injury.
Just carrying the team.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of agree. He's been a shot in the arm that the West Coast Eagles have so much needed. And what I said to you during the week, Davo, for me, it's not necessarily him, being the world beater and making this happen. He is an example that is making the older guys go, you know what? If a young kid's doing this, I can do better. I feel like that's how they're responding anyway. Elliot Yeo's last couple of weeks is back to he's a superb footballer. I love the way he goes about it. Big, strong midfielder, the Fife kind of mould. Getting his 30 possessions again and kicking goals, getting on the scoreboard and being that damaging player that he always was.
He looks like, they just look like a different club now from 2 or 3 weeks ago. Like, it's amazing what confidence can do. I think, Melbourne's been playing on that for a long time now. They look like they lost it against Brisbane, though. It'll be interesting to see what they do tonight. If they're going to run ahead of the ball, which they normally do, instead of stand around. And last week against Brisbane, they stood around. I expect them to run pretty hard tonight against Richmond.
What's the reality, though, with Melbourne? Is it that they were tired? Is it that they had
I think so.
A big 4 or 5 weeks at the start of the season, including round 0, which was a huge success as far as I'm concerned? Port Adelaide looked tired, didn't they, against Collingwood?
Yeah.
They've had a heavy workload as well and travel involved in that. Melbourne had travelled to Adelaide twice.
Yeah, and Freo looked tired too. They had a couple of trips. They had a loss to Carlton. So I just think it's that time of the year. Like, you can drop a game or two. I think the fact that that Melbourne are dropping some games, they're 7th or 8th. They had a hard run in Adelaide, so they'll be all right. I think they'll be good.
Oh, they'll be fine.
You know, you rang me last night, and you said we had some good feedback on last week's episode.
We did. Brad Green was on the last show. Ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't seen it, make sure you go back and have a look or have a listen, however you're finding your way through a Very Melbourne podcast. David Neitz was the week before when you weren't here at the pub. And just to go back over it, just so you know, Melbourne fans, if you love this show on a Wednesday or a Thursday night before the footy, we're going to do this every away game from this pub as much as we possibly can.
Do you hear that?
I
like how he makes the announcement, doesn't tell me when I spent.
I didn't have to do anything. I just had to show up. So
I like the idea.
As far as I'm concerned. No.
It's a good idea. It's a good idea. I love it. It's get the Melbourne supporters down here, get them celebrating pre-game, and head on over to the game. Oh no, it'll be a away game, so watch the game.
You'll be watching it. So why don't you come down to the pub and watch it with us?
Oh, exactly.
I don't know if people can hear us or not.
I think they can.
Fee will let us know over there on the...
Why are we getting told we're not being heard?
I don't know. I don't know.
I think we're being heard. There's people on Facebook, they should say something.
Can we go back to...
The auto captions wouldn't work if we weren't saying anything. What is it? Is that the new
Just
AI?
read it.
The new AI is it's reading our minds before we even say anything. That's amazing. We could just sit here. I just like sit with my beer and it's going to auto caption me.
It's reading our brain. That's where AI has got to. Hey, we were talking about Brad Green and his very real conversation he had with us last week. It's awesome. It really was. He talked a lot about his football journey in his career, coming out of Tasmania to the big time, and how he made it work. Because he was a sensational footballer, but it doesn't just naturally happen. You know, you got to work away at it. And he had some talent, and it all fell into place for him through a lot of hard work and some hard times. But the harder times for Brad Green came later. After his career, we know that he lost his wife and he lost his father in quick succession. He's the father of 2 young boys, and to hear him talk very openly and honestly about how he was able to work his way through that and be a strong man for his kids was inspirational, wasn't it? We got some feedback about it.
Yeah, we got really good feedback because to have someone open up about what they've been through and how they got through it, it helps you as a human realize that sometimes the stuff you're going through isn't as bad as what they've been through. And if they can get through stuff like that, you can get through it. And also some perspective. Like he put it into perspective when he said, I needed to be there for the kids. And sometimes I think we forget that.
Yeah.
I forget that as a parent, to be there for my kids because I'm working too hard or I'm running around doing things or I'm on my phone, and I forget that I have little things that care a lot and want to play, and they're just like my dog. I don't spend more time with my dog. You do.
I do.
But I brought my kids along here. They're
over there.
Not listening. They're
on their gadgets.
On their iPads.
But that's okay.
But yeah, it was a really good episode. I think the more we can get people to open up about life after football and what life struggles are, it makes it real. And it's going to be really good tonight to have Bluey McKenna on, because he's been through some stuff that, you know, we all as AFL supporters, maybe if you're a West Coast Eagles supporter, call for people to be sacked like it's a public hanging. But there's a family involved.
Yeah.
There are people involved. There are people that are dedicated, and like it's really interesting because Bluey's been through a coaching role. He was doing well, and he got let go from that role, and it was a public hanging. That doesn't happen in any other sport.
And we forget about it. As soon as it happens and as soon as they're gone, they're out of sight, out of mind, and we move on with our lives. I found it really interesting. Even what you just said then. I came from an AFL world where we didn't show our emotion. You weren't supposed to. You weren't supposed to show how you were feeling. You just took the advice and you moved on. You got on with it. And if you were too happy or too sad, you'd get some feedback to say, you know, you're putting yourself first and in front of everybody else. We need this football club and this environment to function and to work and to move forward. And if you're being too emotional, you're dragging down on everybody else. So you learn to really suppress a lot of your own stuff. Me being an emotional person, I think all the Melbourne fans out there would know that I am an emotional person. The way I played my football, the emotion came out, and we saw it a lot of the time. Ask any of my teammates, they'll tell you that. And I'm unashamed. I don't apologise for that, because I think I'm a better person because I am able to communicate how I'm feeling. But that said, and what Greenie really made me wake up to is, again, whether I knew this or not, was that my children that I have watch me like a hawk for the direction. If I am sad, they feel it. If I am angry, they feel it. They see it. And we need to it's a good reality check for me. That whole podcast with Brad Green was a real reality check. Get back and have a look at it. We put some reels up about it as well.
We did.
But this week is about moving on and talking to somebody else. Like you said, Bluey McKenna is going to come on about the West Coast Eagles. And that organisation that we don't see up close. You've seen a lot of them because you grew up in Western Australia. Yeah. We don't really see what goes on with that club and how it works within that that culture over there in the West.
It's both coasters. It's Gold Coast and it's West Coast. So it's from a coaching perspective, but also a playing perspective.
We'll get to that. Somebody's just asked, who was it? Give us a beer review. And how's Aaron Cusack says, how's the Burger Boys? How are you, Aaron? How are you, Barry? How are you, Stan, Roxanne? They're all here. The beer is...
Well,
it's called Bang On. I told you last time we were here. It's called Bang On.
it's really good. I didn't taste the first sip because I was running around in circles trying to get audio and everything to work.
That didn't happen.
So I knocked it off. It's awesome. Awesome. And the burgers are good. I'm going to have another one.
The food is amazing. The bar is wonderful. Get down here.
Oh.
Look at that view. You probably can't see it. It's a great view from this rooftop.
Just wipe it on the Melbourne scale. Should we get Bluey on?
We should get Bluey on, I think, and get his perspective on what's going on with the West Coast Eagles. There is a game tonight, so we've got to get off soon.
Yeah, before the Anzac Day ceremony.
Before we get Bluey on, I just want to say I think that the way the AFL does the AFL Anzac to Eve and day game.
Did you notice our producer just left?
She's out of here. She's had enough. She's thrown it.
I can do the camera from here.
Yeah, why not? The way they celebrate Anzac Day, at the start, remember, it was all a bit of conjecture about how...
Another Collingwood game?
Well, yeah, that. And we shouldn't be, playing a game on a day that's about commemorating the loss. And a celebration of, obviously, we did win the wars, I suppose, but we lost so many to the war effort. But I think, and I'm really coming to it, that football, the way we celebrate tonight, go to the MCG tonight and the pre-game festivities, see the stuff tomorrow. It dominates the TV all day and we get cameras out everywhere seeing what everybody does. I think it really brings a lot of attention and highlights
100% agree.
How wonderful it is. Football actually, it doesn't take away from the Anzac spirit, it adds to it. It really grabs it and says, you know what, this is just a game and we're lifting it up and we're saying that Anzac Day is we can play this game because of what those guys did. And I just reckon the young kids know more about Anzac Day because of football.
I think they do.
You're going to have to change the camera angle and chuck it on. The guest of the week, brought to you by None Such Whiskey. None Such, one of the greatest whiskies you will ever have in your life, Bluey. And I know you've had a few.
Lift your arm, get your mic set, get comfortable.
They're down here. They're a Tasmania brewed whiskey, brewed or
well, I know you're born in Tassie, mate. You can wear a t-shirt on not like tonight. But what about old mate over? He's West Australian.
I'm absolutely frozen. Oh. I'm just pretending to look tough as I sit with you two guys because I'm really not. I'm all delicate hands, you know it.
Mate, put the long sleeve on me anytime, mate.
Oh, you used to wear long sleeves, actually.
Well, not all the time.
I mean, you were a pretty hard guy, but come on, running around. Really?
Yeah, well, mate, I just saw one less thing you have to think about, rubbing your hands together and doing all that sort of stuff. Just wear a long sleeve. That's why they got it. What else do you wear them for?
That's very true. I only wore the long sleeves once.
What?
Tassie boy. I grew up in frost-bitten ground, so I wore it once, and I was told in no uncertain terms what people thought of me for doing that. I thought, I'm nuts to that. I'm not wearing a long sleeve ever again. I don't need to give anyone more fodder to get into me.
I'll ramp you up another notch because I used to wear the long sleeve on days like at Western Oval. If you do a freezing Arctic part, I'd have the long sleeve and put the short sleeve over the top of that. Don't worry about that. And a singlet as well. One of those thermo things.
We weren't allowed to do that because our property steward used to get angry because he'd have to wash two jumpers.
Hence the reason I used to wear gloves too. I used to suffer from that
Raynaud's. I've got that too. It's a West Australian thing, I think. It's like don't get cold syndrome.
Anything below 20 degrees, look out.
Bluey, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with yourself these days, mate. We obviously know that you're a West Coast Eagles champion, AFL Hall of Famer. What have you done after your coaching career? I think we also know what you did with your coaching career. What are you doing now?
Well, right now, mate, I'm actually out at the Northcote Aquatic and Health Centre. I started in the managing the gym, so I see Richo up there a fair bit. Sam Stozer comes down. She doesn't venture up the gym. She's more in the aquatics area and all that sort of stuff. But sort of managing that. But now because we're anticipating 3,500 members, we're up to 8,000. It's sort of hit after about 6 months. It's settling around 8, so we've been fairly busy. So I'm now going out to the community and taking our good staff out to the community to run boot camps. Yoga sessions, Zumba. I actually did Zumba this morning.
Zumba?
Zumba.
Is that still a thing? I thought that was...
Mate, it was magnificent. I had to call the fire trucks in to just put the flames out on the floor where I was. A few sparks were lighting up there. But, instead of sort of being customer-driven coming into the club, the health club, I'm actually going out and sort of taking our good stuff out to the community.
Great. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Your coaching career, post your football career, is what we probably want to get to, because I reckon you can add a lot in terms of, the modern day coaches and what they're feeling at the moment. Simon Goodwin, obviously our guy, and a lot of people that were listening right now will get a lot out of that. But there's how many other coaches? 17 other coaches in the AFL at the moment. How do you coach in today's market? Because I reckon when we were playing, it was probably a little easier.
No question. Because you do it my way, it's the highway, and Mick and the Reverend, although everyone says he's, I might not say religious, but the Reverend is in Neil Danaher. I mean, I do hear some stories from some other players. He could tear the paint off the wall too, and Mick was all over that, and so it's my way or the highway. These days, hang on, well, the players and more of the modern day players putting his hand up and asking questions and actually questioning the coach. They may have only played 2 games or been in the AFL 2 minutes, but they're asking questions. Well, why do that? What? And basically, not in a selfish way, what's in it for me, but explain that a bit more. And I always talk about the why generation. They just want to know why. In our day, we didn't get the why. We just told what to do and just went out and did it because, that's what society, that's you brought up with your family. These days, with phones and information and all that sort of stuff, so they're getting all this information from the community and how to live their lives. So when it comes to footy, they turn around and go, well, okay, what tackle? Why should I tackle? How come you don't tackle? And how come he doesn't tackle? And you're asking me to tackle. So there's just a lot more why. So there's just a bit more explanation has to go on. That's all.
Yeah, right. It's interesting you say that, because I've got a mate who's a coach, and he had to quite high level, and had to, as coaches do, have to drop a player when they're not performing.
Yeah.
And he's done that, and he's been straight back at him.
Yeah.
Well, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You're wrong.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Right. You're wrong.
Yeah.
How did you handle?
Hang on, I'm the coach.
How did you handle that up at the Gold Coast? So last week we had Greenie on, Brad Green, and they were talking about they used to get a phone call if they were out on the Wednesday, not in. How would you handle coaching selections during the week? Was it a one-to-one conversation? Was it a phone call?
Oh, yeah, no, because they were kids too. And so we'd have selection Wednesday after training. The boys would then go into a gym. So we'd pick a squad. And so some would come into the squad. It was a fairly tight squad, so 25. So it was 3 emergencies, all that sort of stuff. So some players were going to miss or going to be an emergency, basically, so they knew they were going to be dropped. So I'd go and have a face-to-face chat to them and just let them know and the reasons why. And again, probably for the first couple of seasons at Gold Coast, because we're talking 18-year-olds and then 19-year-olds, a lot of the time, 60% of the time, I reckon, Dave, we were resting them because they just couldn't compete. They couldn't compete up against this monster 5-6 weeks in a row. They're starting to get gassed out and all that sort of stuff. So we'd just say, you're having a rest, you're going to have a week off. Other players like David Swallow, because he was built like a man, we'd move him. So inside mid, for example, just crash for 120 minutes. The poor kid couldn't walk after 3 weeks. But we'd play him at half forward, so it's less combative, We'd even play him at full forward where, it's, you don't have to, there's no contact,
Tackling not required.
Yeah, exactly. And then he can play the whole year. Oh, sorry, no. Or play him off half back, so just where it's less combative, if you know what I mean. And so we'd manage some players that way, but some of them still just needed a week off, in some cases too. So, but the actual dropping of them, I know texting was around and all that sort of stuff, so face to face is best. And hear it from me. It might have been a defensive or a forward player, but they got to hear it from the senior coach, because I've been involved in clubs where assistants would come and tell you, and you're just looking at them going, yeah, that's great, but I want to hear it from the boss. Well, he's the person I need to appease, so I want to hear what he has to say, and then I'll argue that if I think it's worth arguing. But generally in my day, if Mick came and said, mate, you just went out with your tail between your legs and started worrying about playing for the Magoos.
What about I remember watching a show, and Robert Walls was talking about when he went up to Brisbane to coach and how hard it was. New team, not in a football world at all, done exactly the same thing. How hard was it to really get that club going? Did you get enough help from the AFL, or was it just you up in the wilderness trying to create this new team?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the simple answer is yes, but again, they as in the AFL, and the AFL, the system and everyone, we just didn't know what we're about to walk into. I don't think so, because again, we had a footy budget, for example, and we're coming as a 17th side. So I argued, I think it was great diplomacy. I got us from the 9th highest spend to the 8th. I'm thinking, at least It's a one-upmanship.
Going up the ladder.
And that was in the 18. But this was all signed off in the 18s year. So this is 2 years before we joined the AFL, of course. So in 2 years' time, the explosion in footy spend, because you could spend what you liked back then, went nuts. So we went from the 8th spend to about the 28th spend.
Yeah.
So we had the biggest list and the smallest coaching group.
Right.
Well, we had one welfare officer, but again, not because the AFL said, here's your list parameters. We actually could have had 58. We brought it back to 53. So even based on all those numbers, we thought we had it right. But I mean, ultimately, because of the footy spend at these other clubs, it was just so short. But again, it wasn't because they didn't know. No one knew. And that's always people talk about, coaches, who'd you lean on? And I said, well, Nick, and I saw Sheedy on one of the shows last night. I said, well, they never went into a side, or never went into a season, I should say, with 15 debutants at 18, mate.
Yeah.
0 games against them. So I couldn't go and ring them because they never had that experience. I mean, you hear Lee Matthews talk about if I actually played 3 blokes in their debut, 3 blokes in the same game, all of a sudden I'm thinking I'm going to lose this by 5 goals.
Yeah.
We had 15.
I was going to say there's no precedent for that because you're going, how are you going to rest people? And you go, well, who else are you going to play?
What about this one? I know he's a very professional footballer, but doesn't mind having a tipple. What about 3 years later? 18-year-olds are turning 21. We had 17 on our list. So I'm looking at that. I'm thinking, oh my
21st.
God. 21st. 17 of them. The season at that stage was 22.
That's
I'm thinking,
unbelievable.
we're going to have 5 clean weekends. So I call the assistant coaches. It's a pre-season. I think, one good thing in the Western Australians, the SAS. I said they always say, think 50 yards ahead. So it was about late November, and I said to the coaches in to say, boys, just something to think about, I reckon. We've got 21st we're heading into next season, during the season. And we just come off our, we had 3 wins, 3. We just come off we're winning 8 games. So we're heading into our 4th year. I said, what do you reckon? So we all came together, we thought about it. So we ended up having I still remember, it was January 13th. We just come back from our time off over summer. I said, right, boys, partners, let's get a 20. And it was Simon, I forget his last name. He had a Hellenica, a Greek restaurant up on the Gold Coast. I think it's still running now. Fantastic. They weren't a sponsor of the club, but I used to eat there a lot, and he used to sort of look after us. And he said, mate, just tell us, I want to do something. I said, mate, I've got something for you. Would you mind hosting
21 birthdays?
Yeah. Well, we had the whole squad went. He played for the lot. It was fantastic.
Wow.
So we went out as coaches. The boys went there with their partners. We had the 21st. Now, not that we kept tabs on them. I'm sure they might have snuck off during the year, but we're actually contained it. Now, look, as it turned out, that season we won 10 games and all that sort of stuff. So I think we're going okay, but it was just like frightening because normally in a normal club you might have 3, maybe 4 in a year, 21st, but 17, I think, and that's one every week up until the 17th week. I'm going, how are we going to compete here? So just things like that were. And I still remember in our first year when we were up there in the 18s year, trying to get them as professional, the shopping trolley on a Thursday night to get their food for Friday. So we'd train Friday morning, but we're putting on a lunch for them. So me and the conditioning bloke would go down to Broadbeach and we'd fill up the shopping with pasta and rice and all sorts of things. So and then our footy manager was cooking the food. He'd go into the kitchen while we're out training. He had to come in and cook all the food.
It's important, isn't it, though? I mean, you look at the professional clubs, the West Coast Eagles be set up that way, and Melbourne, I know what they do, and Collingwood, you know that they have a footy department that's really just all about making sure the players are comfortable and looked after. And you've got a professional outfit, and if you're playing within that, you feel like you've got a professional outfit behind you, and you'll respond accordingly.
But they're not going with shopping trolleys to the supermarket.
Well, that's what I mean. But this is the point I'm making. This is what he's doing up there. So how do we equalise that? Because it's an uneven competition because of it.
We were doing that in the 80s, but as we grew, then all of a sudden, we had someone come in and cook the lunches and do all that sort of stuff, like I'd seen at Collingwood and places like that.
Are they there now, though? Are they?
Well, I'm not privy because I left there in 2014, so I assume they are. I mean, they've got new facilities there, thanks to the Commonwealth Games and all that sort of stuff. So look, and the side's just older, and that's everyone asking about Gold Coast. Are they going to survive? Well, they're going to start to survive now because they're actually older. I mean, for up until about 3 years ago, so I don't know, 12 years in the competition, mate, they've been in the bottom 4. For the least experienced, but not so much age, games played.
Yeah.
They're just the least experienced. And so the top 4 sides are generally on top. Like Geelong, for example, they won the flag and they had 3,800 games of experience. at the end of my 4th year, we had 790 games. And you go, how do you compete?
Yeah.
Melbourne won. So when Melbourne won the COVID Cup, if you like, over in Perth, they had 2,200 games of experience.
Yeah.
And they're in the wheelhouse. So
it matters.
any sort of mid 2000 to anything higher than that, you're experienced. But anything under that, you're sort of fair game for anyone to knock you off.
So it did end for you up on the Gold Coast. Do you think it was unfair, given that what you just said?
Look, I mean, when I say unfair, I mean, we were 9-4. We're in the finals. You know, Gary goes down with his shoulder, but again, at the time I'm screaming from the rooftop saying, "Yeah, well, Stephen May went down too." And I'm going, "Who's he?"
Well, he's a superstar.
Yeah, well, and for us, he was a superstar, but no one knew who he was.
Yeah.
Charlie Dixon at the other end. He went down in that period for 3 or 4 weeks as well. And no one knew who he was either. But again, turned out to be okay. I mean, Trent McKenzie, Brandon Matera, sort of our core. Not just, I mean, Gary obviously was a super player, but there was 3 or 4 others that went down at the same time. And that said, we never got a clip. So we were 9-4, then basically we lost 7 games and won 1 in the back end of the season, and we were competitive against Essendon in our second last game down here at Etihad, and I said we almost knocked them off. With a side was least experienced than the very first side to play, so we'd actually gone backwards. And you go, but that was the development, because at round 2 up at the Gabba, when we got smashed by Carlton by 119 points, David Swallow was playing his first game. At that game at Etihad, 4 years later, he was playing his 71st or something. So we put the games into the right kids, and we're just ready to start to bloom. So it was just look. All I say is they're impatient. The only thing
It's being not very nice to say that they were impatient. Yeah. There's a few other words that we'd like to.
Well, my only disappointment, and the chairman, John Withereth, and I get on. He sat my. He had to do it with the news, of course. I don't think it was his decision, but anyway, the only thing was I was appointed in the May, because another assistant was appointed in June, and we both got resold. But I got appointed in that May of that last year, when we were not the fact we were I don't know 5-2 or whatever it was, but I got appointed in that year, and then I was sacked in that same year in the October, and I go, well, what was I? didn't steal anything. I didn't touch anyone, or I didn't say anything, nasty to anyone. And I just, the year was the year. Well, that happens, doesn't it?
Yes.
Sides can fall away because of injuries and stuff like that. But so why me? But that was the decisions. And
did you go through that after? Did you go through a why me? Did you like? We talked earlier about like if I get fired in tech, it's kind of like, well, it's kind of normal. You don't read about it. You don't hear about it. You don't have a whole heap of people knowing about it. Is it difficult?
Look, I certainly got emotional, not because I got sacked. It was more just the players, because it was done in October and everyone else was away, and I couldn't sort of say to all the fellas that that it hasn't worked out. Get on with your footy career. I mean, they always say, and Mick was the first one to say congratulations for the job at the Gold Coast. Go well, all that sort of stuff. And there's 2 types of coaches. Ones that have been sacked and ones that are about to be sacked, and joke, laugh. And he said, then it's the art of trying to dodge the bullet for as long as you possibly can. Him and Sheedy's, and obviously Dimmer Hardwick now, there's a few blokes that can do it and do it well, so fantastic. And the old shiny cup helps, of course. But again, just with a young side, and not to say I'm Alistair Clarkson, but he's a great reference point for me, because I go, how's he going with a young list and an inexperienced team?
He's copping it at the moment, isn't he?
But
absolutely,
he's got 4 flags. He's got 4 premiership cups in his back pockets, which gives him a little bit of a leeway. But my point is that even at Hawthorn, after he's won his 4th one, I sort of use this when people ask me, and I always say, if I had $1, would I spend it in coaching or recruiting? And it's always recruiting for me. Because good players will make a good coach better and all that sort of stuff. But that's my point with Clarko. So I think it was 2 or 3 years after he just won his 4th flag. So arguably at the peak of his powers, right? He's been to Harvard for 10 years. He's won his flags. 3 years later, he goes through a season and wins 5 games. What? He can't coach? He's a bad coach? Doesn't know what he's doing anymore? He's lost his marbles? No. It's his list. It's his cattle. He goes into a fight like, some of the Gold Coast coaches used to, with one arm tied behind his back, and you're trying to fight with someone with 2 hands, with someone with 3,000 games of experience. So he goes through that now, and I don't sit back and say, I'm Alistair Clarkson. I don't really want a flag, but how's he going right now with North Melbourne with a young list?
Yeah.
That continually gets smashed. Yeah. People just taking. Yeah. Like Horn Francis leaves, obviously, is a big one. Then you lose the number 1 draft pick, and we know what that kid's done for the West Coast Eagles.
Then Adam Simpson last year, most people were saying his job is completely untenable.
How has he dodged the bullets over the last couple of years?
Well, he's got a shiny cup in his back pocket, so that'll give him some leeway. Oh, yeah, of course it does, yeah. But the thing is, if you look at their list now,
It's probably why Dom Sheed still gets a game.
so there might be some photos with some players, mind you. But yeah, I mean, it gives you a bit of a leeway. But again, if you look close, I always think just because they've gone young now, they've got some old blokes that tip them over to the old. But look at the game's experience. You know, that's what I always look at, and they're not super low, because you put Yo in and you put when Gaff plays, you know, boom, or they go up. It was like us. We ran out that first game with 22, so we had 15 playing their first game. We had 700, I think it was 780 the games were. So with the 8 experienced blokes like Nathan Bock, Gary Ablett, Josh Fraser, Campbell Brown, they made up, 765 games of experience through 8 blokes. The other 14 had one game.
I know what I was like when I played my first game. I had no clue what I was doing. You know, you look to the older guys for show me the way here. How do we go about this? And it's not a natural progression into AFL football, is it? It was so hard, and Tassie's going to feel that. I know they'll learn from the mistakes of the past.
Yeah. Well, GWS did a bit that because and the AFL forced them to get rid of their second round of picks, their 17-year-olds.
Yeah,
we only had one go at them, and we got them, and we actually then got. So Jager O'Meara was actually one of the 17 picks that GWS had, but we bartered for him.
Yep.
But again, Jager was a fantastic player. He's one of those few that actually, like Harley Reid right now, hits the ground running, right? But in essence, we shouldn't have gone for a younger kid. We should have gone for a middle tier player, because again, what we were doing was replacing a 20-year-old that had played 40 games with now an 18-year-old hadn't played no games. Yeah. You know, and again, the older sides replaced 25-year-olds with a 27-year-old. Maybe not as good, but he's maturing, so he understands exactly what you just said. He understands the game, so he makes 80% good decisions. He might be technically super quick or a great kick, but he gets it. Whereas we just kept going younger all the time, and so inexperienced all the time, and so it just made it so much hard work for our senior players that we didn't have a lot to protect our kids.
Hey, Bluey, were you one of the people that pioneered coaching from the sidelines? Because everyone now coaches from the sidelines. You're not into telephones, or like what was the reason for heading down to the boundary?
They kept breaking.
The coaches are off at the thing
Look, it was partly because it was a young crew, and like the messaging that you and I would have been used to, Robbo, with the coach speaking and all that sort of stuff.
Tackle, Robbo! For God's sake!
Well, sometimes I think Mick.
That's all I got.
Mick picked the phone up, but you didn't actually hear that. You could actually hear him out the window.
Hold the phone out here.
And then
did you both get sprays on the bench?
Oh,
You had to pick the.
Of course.
Yeah.
God, yeah.
More than 20.
I'm still getting the hearing back in my.
And it wasn't positive feedback. It wasn't like you're doing really well. Keep running around the wing. No.
No whatsoever. No, it was because of the young crew, and I'm saying, well, maybe they're not getting the message. And I had Kenny Hinkley. So he was had inexperienced Dean Solomon and Shane O'Brien. I'd worked with Cheesy O'Brien at Collingwood as a player, and be a very smart coach, and not the loudest fella, but super smart and gets good relationships with players. So he was young. Dean Solomon was young. So they stayed upstairs, and with Kenny Hinkley, obviously he'd worked with Blighty and a few other coaches, and he coached on his coached at Camperdown, I think. So I knew he could coach, and smart man and all that sort of stuff. So I had full confidence in him up in the box, so he could look at what was going on. And he was really just relaying the information to me. I'd sometimes see something like Robbo hadn't tackled again. I said, well, he hasn't got that message for the last 10 years. He's not going to get it now, so we just leave that one go.
So he kicks a goal.
But they would give me and say, you need to speak to Charlie. We're going to get him off because he's not doing this. Okay, so then I would speak to him. The other part to that was Gary. Everyone never go at his leadership, but he was actually really good as a leader, because he would come, but he would vent sometimes. And he'd vent in front of the box, and I started hearing that the year before. I started hearing that from some of the staff. They said, and some of the kids, of course, like 18-year-olds, the great Gary Ablett, as soon as he says jump, everyone says, starts hiding and starts doing their shoelaces up, don't know where to look, and then they're rattled, and then they're even rattled playing football for the first time in this professional league. Now they've got to go up after the captain's given them someone else's spray and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, so I came down, so it was really just for him for me to be a filter for him, so he could vent at me. And I'll try and explain if I had to. I'll say, that's a fair point, Gary. Try and diffuse it as best we can and talk through that. I mean, the good thing was Gary never came off a lot, so I didn't have to do that.
That was one way to solve it.
Because we'd have to send him forward, then we'd have to send him back, then we'd have to send him out in the wing, we'd have to send him in the ruck. Well, anyway, but so then I could speak to the kids. So that was, I got a lot out of that. But I don't think I pioneered it. It was just a necessity. Because we were so young, like we had 17 young kids playing most weeks. Like Lockie got it, all the other old blokes get it. Come on, get off and get it. I mean, as you would do, Robbo, probably, and even with Mick. You're hearing him, but you're not listening, if you know what I mean. Yeah, okay, I heard that one before. Yeah, just go back out and go again, And whereas the young kids, you give them a message sometimes, and just through that phone, some kids will get rattled, and geez, what, not so much how you said it, it's just what you said, and they can interpret it. So
the hard one though is, and I reckon a lot of local coaches understand this, and junior coaches as well. You learn from your mistakes more than you do your wins. It's just natural, and I've got a bit of a paradox, I suppose. Not a paradox. It's a problem, really. We've got a team that has won every game for the last 2 years by over 70 points. Division 1, they're a really good junior team. And we're always struggling to find something to teach them because they seem to be they're actually really quite talented. And they're winning, and keeping them level is the hardest thing with it. But even if it was 30 years ago, 20 years ago, you'd be like screaming about training because they're not putting in. But you can't do that anymore. You can't scream them because it's just not how it's done anymore, and you get exposed.
Is that the side you're coaching, you saying?
Well, assistant coach.
Because the other side worked out you're actually playing too. You want me to come out? I'll call a head count. I usually call head counts.
I feel like doing it sometimes. I could have done better than that.
How come you're not the head coach?
Because I'm the head
tackling
coach,
drills.
The head coach, Justin Platt, who's son.
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer, not so much you winning by 70 points every time, Robbo, and you sitting there beating your chest. Like I said about the
like Bluey said, it's got nothing to do with you. It's got to do with the cattle.
Yeah, it's the Y generation. So as a coach now, rather than I saw what I saw, boom, Robbo, well, how come you kicked there and you didn't do this and you didn't do this?
It's hard though.
No, but my point is you go, Robbo, what did you tell me what you saw?
Yeah.
And so you describe it, then I can say, right, okay, so you didn't see Dave on your right hand side, or you didn't see Dave long, did you? And so it's almost asking the question. So paint the picture, because again, the picture you paint, I could ask the same question to Dave, and it'll be a different picture.
Yeah.
Because his vision may be not as good, or sometimes players always look short, or some players look long. Some players, as you know, don't even look at all. You know? And so you've got to find out what makes them tick and what they see.
It's great what he says because, and in being serious for a second, it's a great way to parent as well. And I mean, it's how you parent, it's how you should coach, really.
I was saying it's evolving like a workplace.
Yeah.
Like I can't go to work and tell an employee, what the hell are you doing? Why did you do that? That's unbelievable. This is the 5th time this week, your whole career that you've worked here. You've done nothing but you just. It'd be good if you could have a Mick Moldhouse in within your office. I don't know how long people would stay for.
Well, they say these days you're allowed 1 or maybe 3 in a year. But I'm the same too. I'll be obviously coaching Caulfield still. So there's the occasion where it'll come out, but it's a rarity. Whereas nowadays, it was like 8 times out of 10 it was coming out. You knew it. We used to call jokingly behind Mick's back. We used to call someone the flavour. So if you'd be on your back, Dave, we'd say, oh, guess what, Dave's the flavour now. Just watch him go. And you could be a training. You could train absolutely like Roger Bannister running, the 1,500 metres, looking picture perfect like a gazelle out in the savannah. And then all of a sudden, Mick will just blow his whistle, have a go at you, and he'll be going, what did I do? Like, you'll kick it to someone, the person will drop the mark, but he'll blame you for your kick. You go, well, hang on, I put it on his chest, and he dropped it, but we'll just call you the flavour. And
it's interesting.
And the coach will just go, whack, but these days he couldn't do that because,
I had a CEO like that, but he was just like that because he just wanted to knock everyone down a level to keep everyone accountable. It was like a leadership technique to make sure the ego didn't get too far ahead.
I love what you said, though. It takes time, though. It takes a lot of time. And junior clubs obviously don't have the facility to be able to spend that much time with each junior. But like parents, we're talking to parents right now out there. You've got 2 kids that could not be further apart in terms of their the way they go about things. So you've got to parent each one differently, which is what you're talking about. But you've got to get down to that level and make them see these days now why did this happen or why was that the result rather than like we got when we were kids.
Yeah.
So
Well, as you say, the art of parenting, the art of coaching these days is you ask the question and get the feedback from them.
yeah.
Because again, you see what you see, but I'm standing on the sidelines under no pressure whatsoever. I'm not out at the hurly-burly, and you and I have been out there, so we understand what it's like.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, a coach just goes whack at someone. You go, well, hang on, how come you didn't see? Well, hang on, mate, I had my eyes down here. I was trying to pick up the ball. I'm worried about this bloke ripping my head. All that sort of stuff. You just say, so why? Just ask them why. And so I find it enlightening when you can actually calm yourself down and just ask the question on why.
Yeah.
And I find it for the player, I'm sure, is diffusing as opposed to competent leaders. So why did you do that, Dave? And so they can tell their story.
Yeah.
And
they can own that answer.
Yeah.
They can think it through too and go, oh, I see your point.
Yeah, because everyone, defenders are different, forwards are different, midfielders. So they're also. So when you ask that question of a midfielder and you've just brought two midfielders off, I guarantee you there'll be two different stories they tell you because they just see the game differently and you go, okay, fair enough. And sometimes that's what you have to do.
Imagine if Robbo was asked the question. So Robbo, why didn't you lay a tackle? Why is it 6 games now and you haven't even come close?
Well, they told him off. Apparently the Reverend had a go at him a couple of times, so he's turned up the next week with a fishing rod. He thought that's what he meant by tackle.
That was my response when he said, "Why did you tackle? What's that?" No, come on, guys. I tackled a couple of times. Coaching-wise, you've done a bit of that, I reckon, post your playing days. Now you have more of an affinity for the coaches that are going about it right now. Obviously, Simon Goodwin being the Melbourne coach.
Yeah.
Had a summer from hell, you would have thought, in terms of copying it from all and sundry. Probably, saved a lot of clubs that are struggling at the moment, a bit of media. And it wasn't necessarily all he's doing, but how do you reckon he's handled all of that?
Well, yeah, I reckon he was sitting there, late November, early December, just saying, is it round 1 next week? Is it round 1 next week? Because he just wants to put in start. Because when there's just nothing on, and it's just the heat and the microscopes on you, it's unbearable. And again, as I said, he would have clearly been sitting back. I mean, obviously, they talk about the bubble. Rossi Lyon talks about the bubble, and the Melbourne bubble would have been there, but just getting poked from the outside, and it was relentless. And he would have just, as I said, just been waiting for round 1 to start, and all of a sudden the focus will shift to who's winning and who's not winning, and who's the superstar and all that sort of stuff. So it is, and when it gets I'd say personal. I'm not sure. I read enough, but only he would know if he took it. I can't speak for Goody, but there was some certainly articles I thought, well, he might take that personally. I don't reckon that's right because I don't know. I'm not sure the journalist actually knows. Like conversations and all that sort of stuff. So sometimes the journalism can inflame it. And look, we all say we don't read it. Well, of course you do read it. It's just,
I was going to ask that. Do you read it?
So I only default to having dealt with journalists. And so I know what I've said to them, but then the story will be totally different. And I'll ring them sometimes. So, yeah, but you didn't talk to me like that. And that wasn't the context of why I said what I answered that question and all that sort of stuff. So when it was probably coming for Goody, so he would have been, with Purdy, CEO, the president, all that sort of stuff. That would be the two people I'd be just going to and asking for affirmation to say, are we okay here? Is this going okay? What are we going to do about this? Not so much. Well, and even a cry for help sometimes. Can you help me? Can you? Because one of you two people just get on the front foot and try and hose the flames down somehow, whether you can or not. So, yeah. So, but again, to answer your question too, that's what I think the modern day coach is a lot better at that. Yeah. Like Aidan Clarko, given what he went through last year. I mean, that's when he did what he did. That surprised me because he's probably more. He's not an old-fashioned coach like the Reverend or Mick or Sheets. But when he stepped away, I'll be honest, I was a bit surprised he did it. Because I didn't think that was in his natural nature. So, but that's a good thing that he did, And again, I thought at one stage maybe Goody was going to do that. Different scenarios, I understand, and all that sort of stuff. But what you're trying to do is get affirmation from people within the club. Because when the grenades are coming from outside the club, you can't stop them. They're going to keep coming. And he could win the next 12 in a row. You know what? There'll be a forum around somewhere saying he's still a bad coach. Yeah. So they just keep coming.
Well, you're only as good as your last game, aren't you? And
makes me pretty crap then.
How many years ago was it your last game?
Oh, what sport?
Hey, we've been talking a bit this week about Harley Reid and the West Coast Eagles. They've won 2 games. It's unbelievable. You being a West
In a
Coast
row.
champion. It's been a long, hard road to get here. The question has to be asked, is it on the back of this young kid or is it, what is it? Because they were terrible for a couple of years.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not saying they're out of the woods yet. I know Digital Dave over there, he's a West Coast boy too, and so we often talk. And I spoke, I'm not just down the road from here. I spoke and everyone was saying, oh yeah, we'll have this bad year and we'll be back next year. And I'm going, no, this is a long haul. We've only just started here. I'm still suspecting this will be worse. But that said, I've never seen a kid. Someone asked me about, because I was at West Coast, I just retired when West Coast picked up Juddy.
Taxi.
And the difference in might be slightly different than the competition. I reckon 2000 now, there's more younger players playing, if you know what I mean. Juddy probably played, like I said to someone, he came up his first game, which was second round of the season. He came up against the Scott brothers, for example. Yeah. I'm not sure Harley Reid's come up against blokes of that ilk and that experience, if you know what I mean. So it's slightly different.
He did play on Fife though last week.
Well, yeah, in the midfield, but for a long time. So he had these blokes on the whole night, and it wasn't Brad, it was Chris.
Tagging.
Yeah, and he still kicked 3 and all that sort of stuff.
Gotcha.
And had a lot of bruising, I think.
Was that why he's rested this week, Harley Reid too?
Possibly, they're managing him too. I'm not sure he's playing up
Which I think it's smart. It's smart to manage him through.
But what I was going to say, but he actually looks like a man player. It was a bit like Jago Mir up the Gold Coast.
He looks like he's 21.
Yeah, he looks like he's been in the system 3 or 4 years. Juddy, well, if he's been in the system 4 or 5 years, Juddy looked like he's been in the system 2 or 3. I reckon he's got Juddy covered.
Yeah.
As far as, because he just looks much bigger. Juddy, because he had shoulder problems, may not have been able to do the weights. If you remember Juddy when he first played. And they've been throwing up some clips of him recently too. And you look at the 2 of them, and Harley Reid looks probably 10 kilos heavy.
Which begs the question, how good can he be? How much better can he get?
Is he Patrick Cripps size?
If this is his...
I'm
not that big.
Not that big, but he's definitely quicker, that's for sure.
He's quicker than
fend-offs, so that's the other thing.
Strong.
Juddy, probably Juddy didn't have to, because I dare say in a foot race, I reckon Juddy may have just have him covered, but Juddy just had the agility to get through, and then he had the supreme power, as this bloke's fending off mature players.
Modern day footballer, isn't he? He really is a modern day footballer, especially for that midfield sort of play. And you do have to be strong. Yeah. You know, Paddy Cripps are saying, the modern day footballer is 6'3", like he is. Not necessarily. This guy comes in like he was. I think he was a Richmond supporter, wasn't he? So he grew up watching his fending off for days, and he's doing the same sort of thing. I wonder if is Dustin the modern day footballer? Is Harley Reid the modern day footballer? Jeez. It's exciting to watch.
It's really exciting.
And literally, as we can, because I said, look, he'll be okay, but he's going to be like a kid if he kids are consistently inconsistent. But his form so far has been fantastic. But that's like we've spoken about managing his body. He's a young body still. I mean, one thing he hasn't done, I always talk about novice to expert. And he'll be an expert, clearly, but he's a novice at playing against senior bodies right now. So at some stage, it's going to bite him in the backside. So I'd say the club's smart, just pulling him back. And as I said, not saying I know it all, but I was talking about David Swallow before. So you go to him, how you feeling? The kids will say, they walk in with a broken, no, I want to keep playing. It's all about playing games of footy, as we all did, We had the honest conversation. I said, well, we can spell you for a week, or we can put you to half forward, so get you out of the midfield. So David Swallow, Dion Prestia, these plays, Josh Caddy, whack their hands. I'll go. So I'll play down back. I mean, we got Dion to play off half back one because I threatened him. I said, well, we can rest you, we can play half back this week. And tag you, for example. Well, I'll do that.
Of course.
So there's ways to manipulate, but because again, he's just not in the hurly-burly of smashing into midfielders, and that. But given he starts in the season, like as you say, bashing up against Fifey, pushing up against Dusty, all these blokes, well, he might be gassed, which is great for him to put his hand up and spot.
I bet he didn't.
Yeah, I bet he didn't too. But coerced or pushed down that path to say, mate, have a week off and then you play another 6 or whatever the case may be.
Do you know what my biggest concern was? That we would have another, and as I looked at the TV, we can see the pre-game stuff's happening over there. So we might head off soon because this whole rooftop is going to be watching the Richmond-Melbourne game. What worried me about Harley Reid was the Jack Watts syndrome, which was Melbourne had struggled for so long. And it's a little different because the West Coast have had some success obviously recent history. Collingwood beat them, thanks to Dom Sheed, in a grand final. But Melbourne hadn't won one for 50 years, right? So the great white hope, Jack Watts, comes in. Queen's birthday, they set him up in a press conference. A press conference before a game, if you don't mind. Doesn't just sneak in like all the rest of us did. My worry for Harley Reid was he was going to come and the West Coast Eagles are like, you've got to save us because we're the White Knight syndrome over there. And it's an interesting watch again, Davo, to go back and have a look at Jack Watts' interview that we did with him on the podcast. It was unbelievable, some of the stuff that he spilled his guts on and the emotion of it for him and what the reality was. But it doesn't seem like Harley's, feeling like that, is he?
Well, again, I mean, I can't speak for Jack better than I do. I sort of know him, and I was actually on the Collingwood coach's box when we're up against him. And the first things we were saying is, mate, this kid goes anywhere near the ball. Well, not like that, but something like that. Mick might have said that. I might have been a little bit more diplomatic.
Was Mick coaching then?
Yeah.
Right.
So you can imagine him. Big circle around his name. Hey, this kid, don't let him off the chain. Okay, he gets anywhere near that contest, you make sure he earns it,
Wow.
Not like that. He's so, anyway.
What a pack of assholes.
But I mean, the White Knight and all that sort of stuff. I said, and that's the thing, that's why what he's done has been super. But the people around him, there's not a lot of support. That's why I thought even the back end of this season, I don't want it to go that way, but I don't think he's going to. He won't have enough energy to pull everyone across the line every week. Obviously, because he's been obviously rested this week and all that sort of stuff. So it's a watch and see. But I mean, the kids, and again, unfortunately, it's not Jack Watts' fault.
No.
I don't want to say I'm going to blame the club for that, but it's everyone around him that made that decision to play him there.
Yeah.
Was he ready? I always say, mentally or physically. And as I said, unfortunately, we tried to do that at Gold Coast, but we had 15 debutants, but we had I could have picked another 15, but I reckon we got most of those right. Yeah. And then when Jager came up, he was another man. I don't want to say a man-child. He's a bit like Harley Reid too, that just hit the ground running. His first 2 years, wasn't a lot we had to teach him. He was fending off and doing all that sort of stuff, but probably not getting the accolades like Harley Reid is because we were Gold Coast rather than Queensland, whereas this is West Australian, big side, all that sort of stuff. But he was another terrific young kid. But there were some kids, I'll be honest, I wouldn't pick them because I just didn't think they were mentally ready to go. Physically, they might have been, but mentally, they're not going to handle it. And so we chose to give them another 6 weeks or give them another 10 weeks just to settle in and get used to the humdrum of the normal footy world. So it is tough on what these kids are asked to do. And the rare ones get through. One of the great lines that the great Malcolm Blight used to talk about is the 80-20 rule applies. Most of the time, it's 3 or 4 years. 80% of the draft will take 3 or 4 years to emerge as a player. It's the 20% and probably it's more like the 10%. Harley Reid's, Chris Judd's, Luke Hodge, who's I going to say? I was just talking about Jager O'Meara's. They're the rare ones. They come in 2 or 3 games and you think they've been playing for 3 or 4 years, but the majority of players take 3 or 4 years. I still use the analogy I used to use at the Gold Coast a lot with Tommy Hawkins. Just played his 350th game or whatever. But in his 5th year, he plays out here at the MCG. Yeah. He pulls Ben Reid's pants down and slaps him on the bum and kicks 5 goals and announces himself. 5 years he's been in the system. 5 years of training alongside multiple premiership players. So think about Harley Reid now. He might have 4 or 5 around him. And I always say Jager O'Meara, he could have been picked up by Hawthorn, but we chose him. We got him. So he's training up there with Campbell Brown and Gary Ablett as premiership players. If Hawthorn had got him, he would have had 30 other teammates with multiple premierships dangling off. So there's another 30 coaches. So he would be a far better player. But Tom Hawkins, 5 years, because he jumps in as a tall forward. There's Cam Mooney, chief forward. He gets the best defender. James Podliali gets the second, and I get the third. I get the chunk. But I'm a kid. I don't know what's going on, right? 3 years later, Mooney goes. I'm up to 60 games. James Podliani's getting the best defender. Now I've got the second best defender. Now I've been in the gym 3 or 4 years. I'm starting to push these blokes around, getting a bit of a touch. I played 60 games. Then James Podliani, after 5 years, retires. We've played 120 games. He's as big as 3 fridges. and all of a sudden he pulls Ben, and you wonder why.
Yeah.
But it took him 5 years.
Took him 5 years.
5 years, and probably one of the best nurseries going around.
He's a
So
rare
you look
beast.
at West Coast right now, and even Clarko at North, as good as he is as a coach, he doesn't have that on-field leadership and,
He lost them all.
support.
He lost them all.
Campbell
Every
Brown would have been an easy guy to coach, wouldn't he?
Well, he actually was.
Was he?
He's a good bloke.
Well, fantastic to coach off-field. Lunatic, but no. Brownie was because you just wind him up and just let him loose. But he showed our kids what it was like to play for the jumper and just the essence of the jumper with your mates, how hard you had to be defensively, offensively. Well, he didn't get the offensive part too much, but he got the defense really well. But he was just heart and soul, and that's all these skillful kids sometimes, as I say, it doesn't take talent to tackle. And Brownie was the first one to show them that.
Yes, it does.
That's all you needed to be told.
Every time he taps me in it takes me back to the days I was playing against the West Coast Eagles, getting bits and punched by Johnny Worsfold and Jagger.
I would tap you, wish you would pinch you and punch you, so there is a difference.
Oh, that was a debut for me, Johnny Worsfold. Oh my Lord, I've spoken about it on the podcast before. We don't need to go there. We'll get moving because this game's going to start soon. Your own career, obviously, West Coast Eagles, a couple of premierships, brought a club from nowhere to something. You got to be happy with what you're able to produce for yourself, your own career. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, I look back on it, and as you do, as you get older, you have time to look back during your career and even shortly after. And then if you get into coaching, you're still in the footy bubble, you don't really reflect on a lot. The Hall of Fame night's a great night, but that's a good night to learn about. If you get inducted, you can, I didn't realise, and you hear all this sort of stuff. So as you get older, your stories get longer and all that sort of stuff. But you sort of look back and you go, I always think I was just fortunate, just really lucky to be a part of an era of West Coast in 10 years. They went through 2 coaches, mind you, in 3 years, I reckon. Yeah. I joined the second year. Toddy went out, and then I had Mick then for 10 years. And we played in finals every year. 10 years in finals. And
It's unreal.
3 grand finals. We don't count the one out at Waverley we lost, because who remembers that apart from the Hawthorn people, unfortunately. And then the 2 we won, and you just go, how fortunate. And then, they talk about Joel Selwood's captaincy record and his record at Geelong, which is phenomenal, but which is fantastic. We never got near that, but just to play in such a successful 10-year period, Judgy came in and took over, but we sort of all the old blokes had fallen over. We were cooked. We're a bit like our West Coast. I think we won 7 games that next year under Judgy. So, I mean, the list went back, and so that became hard again, but he still loved it. He just loved playing football, and it was just a different era. So I do look back fondly and just go, it was amazing. I was actually amazed the other day. We were talking about something, and Peter Matera's name came up.
Superstar.
5 goals, 3.
Yeah.
Superstar.
In the 92 grand, 8 shots
On the wing.
8 shots on the wing at a grand final.
Yeah.
Like most wingmen won't even get 8 shots in the pre-season or against an intra-club game, but he had 8 shots. Our full
Still
forward,
get goosebumps with Dennis Cometti calling the goal from outside 50.
Yeah.
The Eagles hit the front.
And
It's good.
And someone kicks 6 straight, he always bang his chest about that. So most of the time he kicked 1-5 or 2-4 or something like that. But he decided to kick straight, so I wonder why we won, Dear Freddie. Anyway, but 5-3, and I just look, Peter Matera, like he was
I've
still.
spoken to a lot of AFL legends with some of the work that I do, and one of the questions I asked in an online thing I did of 3 or 4 of these guys was, who's the greatest wingman of all time? And 2 of them said Peter Matera.
Well,
which
your old
is-
team, mate. Well, one of your old players would be up there too, wouldn't he, Robbie?
Robbie, yes,
Yeah.
Robbie was mentioned. There was another Western Australian played for North Melbourne that could play on the wing as well, wasn't it? Is it West Australian? Keith
No,
Brett?
he
No.
wasn't West Australian.
Who was? I'm thinking of somebody else.
Yeah.
You can move off that quickly because I know I'm not going to think of that
Keith
name.
Lyons in North Melbourne, so I thought you were thinking, you're not going to say Keith Gregg up here because he ain't.
You know, he's not West
No, you're
Australian.
thinking Phil Kelly. Phil Kelly was Josh's old man.
Josh's.
But yeah.
No, but
Not the
Keith Gregg was mentioned
Oh,
as
yeah.
well. But to be named up there with those kind of guys,
Frightening,
frighteningly
Great player.
talented.
I know it's not the Robbo show, but let's just talk about tackling because probably Peter Matera's first 2 years, Mick actually had to teach him how to tackle. what made him famous was those rundown tackles.
Yeah.
He'd always strip the bloke as he's tackling him, dragging him to ground, strip him with the ball, then turn around and run back the other way. So
there was hope for you.
Yeah. So
Well, I say this to a lot of people that
did you miss those sessions when the Reverend was running?
We
the
should look
tackle
his
drills?
stats up. There would be stats on you tackles.
I think I've got to.
We were having a massage on the rub down table.
Yes, so it always bit sore.
Exactly.
I say to everybody who gets into me about my tackling efficiency or lack thereof, that if you are that bad defensively, oh my God, how good was the offense to last as long as I did, eh?
As we say, what's the ace
Very
you put
good,
on the
Hollywood.
table? I'm going to take screamers and kick goals for you. That's my ace. That's what I'm doing.
At least you know what you're going to get.
No harassing. I don't want to do any of that stuff. Who's your little forward pocket? Get him to do it for
Yeah,
me.
exactly.
Yeah.
Toughest opponent, mate, for you. Toughest opponent.
I actually just told this to my Caulfield boys the other day, Gavin Brown.
Yes.
And
What a star.
he was a star. Obviously, great captain. Rowdy was his nickname. He's not a vocal person, but every time you played him, and it wouldn't matter whether Collingwood they'd won 10 out of 10 or lost 10 games in a row. 120 minutes, it was just on. It was contest after and it didn't matter the conditions, it didn't matter the state of the game. You just knew you like the whole game. Whereas generally speaking, you get 5 goals down, 10 goals down, the tail goes, the shoulders drop, they stop chasing, and you can sort of cut loose a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas Brownie, it was just on. And I say to my players now, that's what being a footballer, you've got to compete for the whole 20 minutes. Don't worry about the scoreboard, don't worry about the ladder, just compete.
Go back and have a look at some of those West Coast Collingwood battles through the 90s.
Yeah.
Some of those games out at Vic Park.
Not too many of them because he kicked 4 on me on 2 occasions.
Okay, so I watched too many. But it was physical and it was awesome, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it was an era that we miss. We've got a very clean game. We've got a great game now. We all love it. There's no bones about that. We don't think it's gone backwards in any way, but geez, the game has always been brilliant. We love the game. And
Well, you can't throw 50-cent coins at people's heads anymore, which is a bit disappointing from the side of the race at Victoria Park.
What about golf balls? John O'Neill got a golf. He got
a golf ball.
The hot dot land about a metre in front of him. I said, who carries a golf ball in? Because he was ex-Richmond. Well, Richmond. I'm sorry, he went to Collingwood, then went to Richmond. Then he came back at West Coast, so they were just angry, really angry.
Well, you got the golf ball in the head now, you'd have to go through the concussion. That's 3 weeks off.
Oh, yeah. No question. But,
Do you subscribe, Bluey, to, and we're going to wind this up very shortly because the game's about to start. Do you subscribe to the theory of David Rees-Jones that players these days are getting head knocked so much because they're not covering up, they're not used to getting hit, and therefore it's getting worse? Back in the day, him, expected to get belted, so you knew how to
shrug, become the turtle, sit the head down and cover yourself up. A little bit of that, but also the density of the game. So in our game, 6, 6 and 6. Although you used to shoot all your other forwards up the ground, so it's a bit of me time, all that stuff. But with all due respect, it was stage 6, 6 and 6. Yeah. Well, these days, mate, in the defence, there's like 30 players. Yeah. So the chances of running into someone are a lot greater because there's just more bodies in there. Whereas in our time, in our time, it was a lot more open. I mean, on all seriousness, like Mikey Brennan playing on Jason Dunstall was the only time you ever heard Dunstall. If a forward crept inside 50, mate, you get out.
Poor
So
monkey.
good luck, mum. Need a house here all the time, And so, whereas these days, like you on a slow play, especially, I mean, you take a photo of a game of footy, like the full forward standing in the centre of the ground. Nowadays, like Summer, I can't speak for you, Robbo. You're a little bit more athletic than Summer. Maybe just. Someone wouldn't get out the forward 50. It took him about 3 years to get him out the goal square. In his 50 year, he got outside 50, but you wouldn't see him pass the centre circle unless we're warming up before the game started.
The days of the big full forward, kicking big bags,
kicking 100 goals for the season.
Actually, let's put those. What about coaching and then Tony Lockett? How would you go teach him? How would Ross Lyon go with? Come on, Tony, push up the ground. How would you go with big time?
And you never wanted Tony Lockett to be too defensive because he'd tackle someone and smash them so much he'd get 3 weeks.
Exactly.
He just had the white line fever massively.
Or
didn't
not
he?
be in the block and get 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I tried to tackle him. Someone said, you should have pinned his arms. I said, what? You've seen the size of that man? It's like putting your arms around one of those towers at the MCG. I said, I couldn't get my hands together.
One of the greatest stories I've ever heard, football stories, and I've told it before, and I don't know whether it's been on this podcast or not, but you'll love it because the late, great Danny Frawley was getting courted by a few clubs up in Ballarat. Down in Windaree, I think that's where he was playing his football, and he feeling pretty good about himself. Thought he'd wait. St Kilda kept calling, and he's waiting for these other clubs to see what sort of money he was going to get. Anyway, he's gone to a local footy match, and a car's rolled into the ground, a bit of a fancy car, and bloke's got out. It was the St Kilda Footy Club officials, guys, administration, that walked up to Danny Frawley and said, here's the contract, sign it, you'll be a St Kilda player, come with us. And he's like, I don't know if I want to, I'll just wait to see what's going on with the other clubs. One of the officials gone, clicked his finger, and the door opened, and out steps Tony Lockett, and he goes, you don't sign for St Kilda, this is the bloke you'll be playing on for the next 20 years, next 15 years. He goes, give me that paper.
Where do I sign?
He wanted to be next to Tony Lockett, not playing on him. So, we got to play with some superstars in our day, Louis, and you got absolute champions over in the West. You can reel them off, and I've spoken to a lot of them in the last few years, and I just feel honoured to know them, like Big Jacko. He was a man mountain in the back line, wasn't he?
Yeah, well, and he's another one that, because I played alongside him, I just got familiar, and so I just expect him to do what he does. And then I've stepped back and watched him too, like in some of the games that get replayed, and I just go, for a man his size, his agility, like he could play tall, take a mark, use his body, take a mark, jump over the top, spoil it, well, sometimes, but he liked to take a mark. But that was his great strength. He could, the ball coming in, so instead of punching it into a 50-50 situation, he'd go clunk, then all of a sudden it went from Melbourne's ball to West Coast ball where you could counter-attack.
Nothing more humiliating as a forward when your backman takes a mark.
And in the era he played on Salmon and Kernahan, Carey, all these three just about, and had the record over most of them, so, and then kick left and right and all that sort of stuff. So he's like with Peter Matera, Dean Kemp's another one. Matey was always one for me. Again, not technically the greatest skill, but mate, I reckon he had one flat spot in his career, and that's obviously with drinking and stuff like that. The club told him to get off that, and it was the worst 4 weeks of his career. Right. And then all of a sudden he was told, mate, go back to your normal routine. And I still remember it at the Brownlow medal that night. 3 votes. Friday night, C, Main Waring. And we're talking footy, not what happened afterwards. He got 6 votes that night. But yeah, and so Maney was another one, and they would just, because he would just go like a cut cat from point post to point post, 120 minutes, and just, I know one season he kicked 3 goals, 22 from a wing, because he wasn't the greatest kick, but he's just his work rate. He was just, as I said, he was probably the most consistent footballer I'd seen. Tommy Kemp, I mentioned before, he was silky smooth. Chris Lewis, and Summer. I mean, Brett Eddie. Geez, for a half forward, and then, as I said, I can rag on about Peter Summer. He kicked, 500 goals. He kicked 700 points, but if he kicks straight, but joke, laugh. He's got one of the highest goal kicking averages as a full forward for the amount of games he played. Like he averaged 4 per game, which is up there with Tony Lockett, Jason Dunstall. They played more footy and did all that sort of stuff. So, I was, as I said, just so fortunate to play in an era.
Good era.
Had a crazy captain, Johnny Walsall. If you didn't have his blue and yellow colours on, you were just dead meat. And so I could go up and say, Robbo, geez, did you say something about Woosha during the week, mate? He's got something against you. So all of a sudden, blokes are looking over their shoulder because what he was just mad.
I'll say it over and over again. My debut game. So excited to be out on. Well, it wasn't Subiaco. It was the Wacker. Yeah. Well, and I'm standing there at full forward with David Neitz, and I go out to a pocket a bit, and I see the West Coast Eagles defense coming down. This is you, and I'm thinking, please don't be. It's not going to be. I'm not getting Horseful, am I? He comes over. Wait, straight on the arm. I reckon I got a dead arm, and then the rest of the game, he trod on the back of my boots every step, so that my boots just kept coming off. Every step. I'll be so good. Please stop.
Please, sir.
Please, sir, stop.
Please, Mr. Westholt.
Well, talk about the Wacko. So, I don't think it was the first game. He's playing his 3rd or 4th game. Very quick story. I'm sitting up in the stands. I don't hear this, but Tony Evans, normally he'd play forward or play on ball. He had to go down back, maybe to fill my spot. I don't know. Anyway, after the game, we beat Geelong. We beat Geelong in the Wacko. And how'd you find backline? He was his first game down. He said, mate, fantastic. I loved it. But, mate, Woosh is an absolute idiot, isn't he? I said, he's mad. I said, what do you mean? He said, mate, you're going to believe I'm playing on this bloke at half back. He's behind me. Evo. He's just yelling out. And he was so nervous. The ball's up the other end.
Yeah.
I didn't want to turn around because I didn't want to take my eyes off the ball. Evo. And eventually he turns, nervously he turns around real quick. What? Have you ever seen someone's head explode? And everyone's going, well, no, everyone's quite a half smart man. He goes, well, no, not really. No, was his response. He goes, I'm going to punch this young kid in the back of the head that hard, his head's going to explode. And then I just thought, welcome to the back line. And I thought to myself, welcome to my world. That's what I have to deal with. Anyway, then the runner, is it John Devine or the experienced strong runners run past, and apparently the story goes in, he's run past, he said, oh, don't listen to Worsfold, he gets old and cranky. And then Woosh just turned on him, he said, hey, after I punch your players in the back of there, I'm going to punch you in the back of there. So he's after the runner as well. So, yeah, so that's what you had to put up with in your first game. So, yeah, I applaud you for getting through.
Lucky you played with him.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and then I played the Bulldogs the next week and another crazy West Australian, Denny Southern.
Oh, yeah, perfect.
Oh, wow.
I love it.
Welcome to the AFL.
What a freedom over there in the West.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, boys, that's enough for this week. I think it's been a great show.
Thanks for coming on, Bluey.
Thanks, really appreciate it, because the rise of the West Coast Eagles and the Harley Reid at the moment, really wanted to talk to a West Coast person, but we wanted to talk a little bit more about coaching these days and how tough that caper really is, because I know they've got a lot of support networks these days, and it's gotten better over time. Geez, you got to be winning or you're copying it at the moment, don't you? And you don't want your players to take a step wrong or foot wrong, because you get halted, and it's obviously a tough time for the Melbourne Football Club over the summer. They need a win tonight, don't they?
Yeah, they do. And as I say, I always say to the players, well, I can help you with the decisions on the field, the ones off the field.
It's up to you.
The community takes over those. So, as I said, you just guide them in the right way as best you possibly can. So I'm sure Goody, certainly tonight, mate, I reckon they win by 5+, I reckon. I was
going to say, what's your tip for Bang On? The tip that the app that you blokes have developed, the great game that is just the Friday night football. That's not tonight, obviously.
No.
Friday night football, you pick one team. Jump online, Bang On. Jump online to bangon.io and choose and get a group together. We've got a couple of groups going. You only have to tip on one game. Tipping is hard these days.
It's only Friday. Not even I could forget that.
No, Friday night, it's done. You won't miss your tips. You get your margin. A lot of fun. So Bang On. That's it. Thanks for jumping on, mate. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Bluey.
We're going to go watch some football.
Go, you Robbo. Go D's. Go Eagles.
Go the D's.